HMRC now have the power to take money directly from your bank account if you don't pay your tax bill. They've actually had that power for a little while, but they haven't been using it. However, they have just released a new briefing document signalling they are going to be using it more. Now, previously when they tested this, they only used it 19 times in the 2-year period. So you might think, why are they doing this now? And in the brief, they tell you that around 10% of tax just isn't paid on time. And that the idea of the powers is basically to be able to go and get the money from somebody that can afford to pay, but just is choosing not to. And of course, the media are circulating stories about this because it all does sound very worrying. But if you read the briefing document, it's only going to be used in extreme cases where basically the person just hasn't engaged and they've exhausted all their other means. And it's worth saying only when the debt is over £1,000. Now, HMRC in the document have given a big long list of safeguards that they put in place to make sure that they don't cause what they're calling undue hardship on the personal business, i.e. they don't rob your money and you can't live. And most of them seem pretty sensible, but there was one that made me chuckle, and that was about this fact they have to leave 5k in a bank account just to make sure that somebody could pay their rent or their wages, that kind of thing. But I don't want to break it to HMRC, but 5k is not a lot of money in the business world to pay your team's wages or any rent bills. But look, aside from that, actually the steps look pretty detailed and pretty sensible. All that said, in concept, when they started talking about these powers like nearly a decade ago, I was still worried about it because even now we live in a world where the data that HMRC have about a business and its tax debt is just often wrong. And like mistakes happen, that's fine, but it's taken ages to correct right now, and it takes a long time to get things fixed. So for example, I've got a client right now that has a tax debt according to the system of £40,000. He doesn't owe £40,000, and we've tried for a long time to get it corrected, and all that happens is HMRC will say, put a complaint in. Well, that complaint's been in over a year and we've still got the same problem. However, in theory, one of the safeguards does say it involves a personal visit from an officer from HMRC, so who knows, maybe stuff might get resolved a little bit quicker. But I think, jokes aside, the key thing with any tax debt in my experience is just to engage with HMRC. Where we see the most use of like hardline debt collection and presumably these powers is where somebody just ignores everything and just buries their head in the sand and doesn't engage. It kind of reaches a point for HMRC, I think, where they just think, well, what else are we going to do? And often people forget that actually you can just call them, and the people there are quite nice, pretty reasonable, and you can often just arrange a time to pay plan. In fact, I think HMRC give the figure that 9 out of 10 payment plans work. So I'm pretty sure if you just engage with them, you'll probably never see these powers used against you. So please do share this with anybody you think needs to know this info, particularly if they've got a little bit of debt with the revenue.